freaking Al Gore. Seriously, I cannot stand Al Gore. Al Gore is to me what Bill Gates is to Aaron Dykes. I just cannot freaking stand this guy. I can't stand his face. I can't stand to hear his voice. Every time he opens his mouth, he says something that makes me want to gouge out my brain with a rusty spork. I just cannot freaking stand Al Gore. Al Gore, who's been calling on Barack Obama ever since he got reelected to act boldly on climate change, and by act boldly, pushing for a carbon tax. He wants to have that carbon tax, get that in there. Why? I don't know. Maybe because he could become the world's first carbon billionaire. And while he's trying to get the president to charge us for breathing and farting and existing, he'll use all that money to pay his $30,000 utility bills on his freaking mansions. Because that's how much he cares about the environment. Okay? And every time he speaks, again, just makes me want to scream, and now he's saying this.
I think that the wonderful work that Bill and Melinda Gates are doing, for example, illustrates how crucial it is because depressing the rate of child mortality, educating girls, empowering women, and making fertility management ubiquitously available so women can choose how many children and the spacing of children is crucial to the future shape of human civilization. Africa is projected to have more people than China or India by mid-century, more than China and India combined by the end of the century. And this is one of the causal factors that must be addressed.
That's one of the causal factors that must be addressed, Africa having people. And by the way, did you see how self-satisfied Bill Gates looked, nodding, yes, he's talking about me. I'm so great, I'm so wonderful. That's how Bill Gates really is. I've seen him, I've talked to him in real life. He is like that. He is the most in love with himself of any person I think I've ever met. It radiates off him like fumes. It's disgusting. This is two people basically giving each other a verbal hand job right there on stage. I'm sorry, I said it. And it really, I think it's interesting, someone down here pointed out how Africa's got over 11 million square miles, and the other two countries that Mr. Gore mentioned, China and India, only have 4.9 million combined. But anyway, what these douchebags, and yeah, they are douchebags, what they always like to bring up is the population growth rate. So let's actually look at that. This is the CIA World Factbook. And since we know population control is a huge portion of what the CIA has to do, for national security and what have you, let's actually look at the facts here, okay? The number one country for population growth rate is actually Lebanon. And I'm pretty sure we're drone striking them. So they're out. But moving on past that, a lot of these other countries are, yes, they're in Africa. They're right. But you're talking about 4% population growth. Okay? That's not like an insane amount. And here's why. Here's the inconvenient truths that Gore forgot to even talk about in his little mention of how we all need to have some birth control shoved down our throats or up our you-know-whats. How about the death rate, for example? Let's look at that. Let's look at the number one country in the world for death rate. Oh, look, it's South Africa. Then you have Ukraine, and then you have a bunch of other African countries. And then you have Bulgaria and Afghanistan. And then you have more African countries. Then you have Russia, and then you have more African countries. I mean, it just goes on and on. Very high death rate, okay, in these countries. Next, let's take a look at, I don't know, how about life expectancy at birth? The top countries on here, you're not going to find any of those to be in Africa at all. And on a side note, you're not going to find us in there either. The United States is not even in the top 10 or the top 20. In fact, I'm pretty sure, we're 42nd, okay? Which, if you look at how much we're spending on healthcare compared to other countries, is just mildly retarded. But if you scroll all the way down here to the very bottom, you're going to see here who's at the very bottom for life expectancy. Oh, wow. What a shock. It's all African countries, except for Afghanistan. The rest of these are all in Africa. where you can expect to live a long life of 49.44 years if you live in Chad, or 49.56 years if you live in South Africa. Very low life expectancy. Okay? So high death rate, low life expectancy. And speaking of from birth, let's look at the infant mortality rates. Well, your number one country for infant mortality rate is Afghanistan. Yet again, another country we're drone bombing off the freaking map. But after that, what do we have? We have a whole bunch of African countries. Again. These are statistics that Gore seemingly forgot to mention. Or maybe this, for example, the country comparison on who's dying of HIV and AIDS. Oh, look, shocker there. It's mostly all Africa, except for India, the other country that he mentioned, along with China.
If you notice a few things about what Al Gore and Bill Gates are talking about, Al Gore is using the exact talking points of the United Nations, the ones pretty much codified by the UN Fund for Population. And this has all been driven by the NGO groups, and in particular the philanthropic funds of the billionaire assholes clubs, including Rockefeller, Gates, the Carnegie Endowment, the Hewlett-Packard funds, and many others. And what they're doing is, first of all, presupposing that they have a right to tell other people how to live their lives. They're presupposing global control, de facto or official, in the coming future. They're presupposing Anglo-American dominance, and they have literally codified World Bank lending, IMF lending, to these poor countries in Africa and other places around the world adopting population goals. At the same time, they use the overpopulation in Africa, places in Asia and Latin America as a problem that allows them to come in and react and offer their solution. It's an excuse for them to penetrate those countries and take over their foreign affairs. If you look back to what Henry Kissinger said in the 1974 NSM 200 memo, he said that depopulation in the third world was the first priority, and even proposed using starvation by way of denying food rations as a motivation for countries adopting and meeting population reduction goals. They're forcing these countries and browbeating them and using the carrot and stick method to force them into global compliance, and then forcing them to adopt population measures. So they're going to scaremonger about too many while making everyone submit to basically the UN plan for corporate dominance.
These people make me want to vomit.
Who gave them the right to control our lives?